Welcome in to Locked On Knicks. Alex Wolf here, and I have a fantastic guest for you guys today. Of course, it's NCAA Final Four weekend. And so, with that coming up, time for more draft talk because the Knicks aren't really playing for much. So, I got a great guest on today. I have Rafael Barlowe, who you might know from the Big Board podcast, from the Big Board website, also from his channel, NBA Draft Junkies on YouTube, that he's had for a long time. Awesome guest, super knowledgeable. We're going to talk about the NCAA tournament, how it can affect scouting and how much weight to put into the NCAA tournament, as well as talk about the two Duke boys, Paolo Banchero and AJ Griffin, in this first of two parts today. So it's coming up right now on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
All right, welcome in to Locked On Knicks. I want to just thank you guys for making Locked On Knicks your first listen every day, whether it's on your favorite podcast platform or if you're checking us out on YouTube. We really appreciate you guys for making us a part of your daily routine. I'm Alex Wolf. I'm editor-in-chief of Knicks site, The Strickland, which you can find at thestrick.land. And as I said, I'm joined by one of my Locked On colleagues, Rafael Barlowe of the Big Board podcast covering the draft. So I won't hold us up any further. I got some great conversations coming for you guys today, though I should just note, this is the first part of two today. So if you're listening to this and it's in the morning, check back in the afternoon, and there will be another part where I talk about some other prospects with Rafael before we close out, including a name you've probably never heard before, which there will also be one in this show too. So he gives two really great prospects to look into, but that's for later. For right now, here's the start of the conversation with Rafael Barlowe. All right, as promised, I am joined by Rafael Barlowe. You might know him as @Barlow500 on Twitter. He wears many hats, just like many of us do in this basketball business. He is the host of the Locked On NBA Draft podcast and co-host of the Big Board Pod with Chad Ford. I understand taking over that pretty soon, as well as the NBA Big Board newsletter, and also is the founder of the NBA Draft Junkies channel on YouTube, as well as the NBA Draft Junkies website. Rafael, I had to take a long breath to give all of those qualifications there. I'm honored to have you on the show. And how you doing, man? I understand you're in Greece right now.
Yeah, I'm doing good. That makes me sound so important. I had to listen like, sheesh, but it's all true. So, yeah, I'm in Greece right now. It's 2:11 a.m. But I enjoy talking Knicks. I've done some other Knicks podcasts. The fan base is so passionate, and so it's always fun because there's always going to be somebody that likes it. There's always going to be someone that's going to be so direct, like, you are an idiot. So I love the contrast. But yeah, I mean, it's everything is good right now. So thanks for having me on.
Of course, yeah. Thank you for coming on. I think I know some of the podcasts you've been on otherwise, and yeah, we certainly have some characters in the fan base, but especially this time of year when we're down to the the doldrums of the regular season, all Knicks fans are starting to look towards the draft, which is, of course, why I want to talk to you, being one of the better draft voices out there and talent evaluators out there. So I figured we could first talk about the NCAA tournament. Obviously, we have the Final Four coming up here this weekend, and there's been, I think, a lot of surprises in this tournament, despite the fact that a lot of it sort of went chalk, with having Duke end up in the Final Four. I mean, I think a lot of people would have said, yeah, I sort of expect that. Kansas, there's high seeds there. You have UNC come in as sort of like the upset special. But I think that in terms of draft talent, there's been a lot of shakeups in this tournament. And, depending on who you talk to, I think most guys, you've probably been watching most of these prospects since they were in high school. Most guys that are in the draft community have been and watched their whole college, season or their whole college career if they have multiple years under their belt. So the tournament, I feel like a lot of times becomes more of a narrative thing. You know what I mean? But how do you feel about the tournament so far, and what are kind of some of your takeaways?
Yeah, I mean it's been good. Only issue I have with the tournament is that the games start at 1 and 4 o'clock in the morning when I'm here. So I watch a game and then I'll wake up and I've missed the whole game, and then I'll watch the second game that starts at 4, and then it ends at 6, and then now I can't get back to sleep, and then it's been difficult, but it's been a very interesting tournament because everyone's bracket. Well, I shouldn't say everyone, but I know my bracket was shot in the first 48 hours. And but that made it easy for me because it took away the whole. I haven't even looked at the group I'm in. It took away the whole element of, all right, am I going to win? Usually that's kind of stressful. Like, all
Mhm.
right, where am I at? I need this team to lose because I want the prize. But because I felt like, I mean, I lost some teams early, it just allowed me to just kind of watch it. And I mean, we had like the crazy upsets, and then somehow, some way, we ended up with 4 blue blood schools, despite all the crazy upsets. And then, it's almost like it's setting up for this storybook Hollywood fairy tale ending in a sense for Duke if they can win 2 more games, and then we get Duke Carolina at the Final Four for like the tiebreaker. I mean, it's been great. It's been a very wild and up and down last 2 weeks. I mean, we had a Cinderella story, and then we had like some matchups of top prospects. Guys play really well, then they followed up with duds. I mean, it's been great. I've enjoyed it, despite the fact that I still can't get my sleeping pattern
Yeah.
adjusted to being over here
Hmm.
because I've spent I mean, just too many days,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
up late, up early, I should say.
Understandable. So from like a scouting perspective, do you think that there are any players that sort of hurt themselves in this NCAA tournament? Like, I mean, just to give a few examples, Jabari Smith and Auburn don't make it out of the first weekend. Chet
Mhm.
Holmgren and Gonzaga, don't see the final weekend, even though they were the top overall seed. Jaden Ivey and Purdue get bounced by St. Peter's. Likewise with Ty Ty Washington and Kentucky, who Ty Ty was a guy that was being mocked in the Knicks range, certainly. Jalen Duren sort of having his struggles with foul trouble and things of that nature in that Gonzaga matchup. Like, do you, from a talent evaluation perspective, do you look at these games as sort of a way to say like, well, these are these guys facing things that are teams that are out of their comfort zone, that are
Mhm.
out of their conferences, teams they're never going to see, that they have never seen in their career with players they've never seen so far. So is that a good measure of talent, or do you find it to be sort of fluky if certain guys and certain teams get eliminated and not have it affect your evaluation of guys so much?
I mean, honestly, there's a human element to it. Your last impression is something that people are going to remember last, in a sense. So, if your last game you had 30 points, then you left on like a good note on how people remember how your season ended. If you struggled, then it's the same thing. At least for me, I feel like you can't really judge them on one game. I mean, you have at least 30 something games with film, but I do feel like how the tournament shakes out in a sense. If there's a prospect that you're really, really high on and he has a great game, you're kind of like, see, I knew I was right about this guy. And if there's a prospect that you had concerns about and then he has an awful game, it kind of makes you feel like, all right, see, it was justified that I'm not high on this player as everyone else. In this tournament, I feel like you saw a lot of your favorite prospects went out looking, and I mean, they didn't have their best performance. I think Jabari was like either 3 for 13 or 3 for 16. Um, like, again, I just think it boils down to how well you like a player, and if
Mhm.
they played bad, then you're like, oh, see, my concerns were magnified there. But overall, I mean, you still have at least 30 games. And then in cases like Ochai Agbaji from Kansas, who I still feel like, despite the fact that he's played there 4 years and has over 113 games of experience, I think that his stock could rise or fall based off of how he plays in these last 2 games, which I think is really weird that the guy that has the most experience is still on shaky ground. While, I mean, I think you can almost pencil in in no particular order, Banchero, Holmgren, Smith, and Ivy as your top 4 picks, despite that they're all freshmen except Ivy.
Yeah, I was actually just going to bring up like the risers like that, like Abaji. Like in terms of, I feel like there's always those risers, and then I guess you don't really see guys fall as often. I feel like, because especially if it's a top prospect like that, like you can even look at like like Zion and RJ, for example. Like they were on Duke and they didn't end up winning the championship, even though they had all the talent to, and it didn't really affect anything. And they still went 1-3 in the draft. And
Yep.
Chet Holmgren will, as you said, probably definitely still go, I would say, in the top 2-3. Maybe he slips to 4 if a team is mega sold on Jaden Ivey. But like that's probably his floor at this point. But then you have a guy like Inabaji, and I feel like, I guess for better or worse, that always seems to happen, because there will be like the Kemba Walkers of the world that will have an amazing tournament, and then that raises their draft stock to a much higher level, and it ends up working out for them. But then there's for every Kemba, there's like a, I don't know, like a
Joe
Frank,
Alexander.
yeah, or a Frank Kaminsky, or a
Yeah.
Marvin Williams, for a really
Yeah.
a really
When they had
high
a
out
Chris
there
Paul.
example. Yeah, exactly.
And Chris Paul, actually, if I remember correctly, had a terrible last tournament game too. While I think they were upset, or I don't know, they played maybe I forgot who they played, but they played like a smaller school. He goes out with like a bad performance, if I remember correctly. Marvin Williams goes out despite like not even being a starter on a national championship team, and he's being the number 2 pick. So I do think your last impression does carry some weight. But like I said, if you really like a guy, then it's not. If you don't like a guy, then you may give that last game a little bit more power than you normally would for a regular game.
All right, I'll be right back in with Rafael, continuing this awesome discussion. And brace yourself. He's going to bring up a prospect you've probably never heard of before, that the second I looked him up, I was blown away and pretty well convinced that he should be a Knick after the draft. But I just got to let you guys know, today's episode is brought to you by NBA Top Shot. NBA Top Shot is the officially licensed NFT of the NBA. Connect with a passionate community of NBA fans across the globe and build your collection with your favorite moments from NBA history. NBA Top Shot is the future of what being an NBA fan looks like. It's part trading cards, part stock market, and part fantasy sports, with a built-in loyalty program. NBA Top Shot has evolved trading cards and made it easier to buy, sell, and trade by removing the hassle of card grading, shoe boxes, and binders. Their 24/7 peer-to-peer marketplace lets you scroll through all your favorite players and teams. Once you find the moment you've been looking for, you can buy it in a couple of clicks. Now, I hear all the time, why would I buy something that I could watch on YouTube for free? And I tell those people that it's not about watching a highlight. It's about having ownership in the stock market of the NBA's greatest moments. And owning NBA Top Shot moments can get you access to unbuyable, once-in-a-lifetime experiences. For example, last year, Top Shot flew out a group of fans to Phoenix for Game 5 of the NBA Finals, just for having Phoenix Suns moments in their collections. The following week, Top Shot flew out a group of fans to New York for the NBA Draft, and those collectors got to have dinner with 4 future first-round picks the night before they were drafted and play basketball with our very own Obi Toppin. If you sign up for Top Shot today, the best way to start is getting yourself a starter pack. You can pull a moment of a superstar like LeBron or KD, or star rookies like Cade Cunningham or Evan Mobley for $9. Head over to lockedon.nbatopshot.com to start building your collection today. So other than going into this Final Four weekend, and then obviously the championship game, other than I'll leave out 2 names because we'll probably talk about them a little bit in a minute, in Paolo Banchero and AJ Griffin. I'll leave them off the table because they're the obvious guys that if you're looking for top end draft talent, they're probably guys you're going to look at. But who are you watching this weekend from like a scouting perspective in these final games? And then let's just say specifically, if you were the Knicks and or a Knicks fan and you're presuming, the Knicks never move up in the lottery. So the Knicks will probably end up with the 11th or 12th, maybe the 10th pick if they really luck out. But that's probably their range. Who would you be looking at if you're like a Knicks fan or the Knicks front office in general, if you're watching the tournament this weekend?
See, I love these type of questions because I've always tried to make myself the general manager of every team. And actually, I had a YouTube video that I did maybe 2 years ago during COVID where I had plenty of time. and I like made myself the Knicks GM. Like on NBA 2K, I had like the suit and tie on with Knicks colors, and I pretended to be the Knicks GM. I forgot whatever moves that I made. But if I'm the Knicks GM, like I have total control, I would probably be looking for a point guard, but I don't know if there is a game changer at the one that is available in that range. I do like Kennedy Chandler. I like him a lot. I don't know if I would take him at 11. I mean, I think of course you got to do best player available, and I feel like in this draft, after maybe 5 through 10, I think it's I mean it's fluid. It can just kind of fluctuate, and then of course you don't want to have like some redundancy there. But I also feel like, let's say a guy like Mark Williams has a great. I mean, he's already had an impressive NCAA tournament so far. He's only missed like 6 of the 31 shots that he's taken. He's blocked 5 shots a few times. I mean, he's been a dominant defensive presence. And if you're the Knicks, you may say, all right, well, you know what? He's available at number 11. We have Mitchell Robinson, but we can just save some money. We don't have to pay Mitchell this extension, and we can just get Mark Williams to replace him for cheaper for the next 3 or 4 years. So I think that could be an option, depending on what happens with Julius. But then again, even if you move Julius, you still have Obi there, so you don't want to like bring in another four. At least in my opinion, I don't think you want to, kind of do the same thing over again. I know you just paid Fournier. I know RJ's supposed to be there. So it's almost like point guard or maybe center, depending on what happens with Mitch, is like the only two positions where a top 10 pick is expected to come in from day one and be a starter. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I like Mark Williams there, point guard. I thought about Ty. And on one hand, I know that his play kind of declined a little bit after he sprained his ankle. And I don't want to sound like an ageist here, but the thing about Ty that kind of concerns me is he's a freshman, but he's 20.
Mm-hmm.
He's 20 years old. He's only like a few months younger than than Wendell Moore, who's a junior. So when I look at the evaluation, it's like, all right, if Wendell Moore was a holdback and was a 20-year-old freshman and he's playing the way he's played now, we'd probably be talking about him as a lottery pick.
Yeah.
I mean, he shot like 50% from the floor, 40% from three, like 5 rebounds, 4 assists on a team that is, in the Final Four. So I wonder, like, all right, like, is Ty is he being graded as someone that has high upside because he's a freshman, even though he's 20 years old? So those are things that I kind of ask myself. But yeah, I mean, I look for a point guard. Like I said, I think Kennedy Chandler would be my number one point guard on this. But then if I'm the Knicks, I may swing for the fences. And there's a guy that I like named Terquavian Smith from NC State. Not a name that you've been hearing about on draft boards, but he came in late in the season, averaged like 16 a game, shot a good percentage from three. He's athletic. He's a shot creator. He's fast. He's, like a guy that's just kind of like been under the radar, and he wasn't a top 100. If he maybe was a fringe top 100 pick, recruit, but I think he's trending in the right direction. And I think Leon Rose has the stability to where he can swing for the fences on a guy like Terquavian Smith. So that would be another option for me.
Man, yeah, you just made me Google someone in the middle of the podcast because I was like, who in the heck? But hey, I like the idea. If you were going to try to, nail down a range for him, like he played a full season for NC State. Stats look great. If you were going to try to nail down a range for him, do you think that he's going to end up more of a second round guy, or you think that he's someone that's going to creep into that first round conversation? Sort of like how Quickly did almost.
Yeah, I think even more so because he's younger, and then I think once he gets into these workouts, you're going to start seeing him shoot up these boards. Every year there's a guy like during workouts, you're like, what? Where did he come from? And NC State was pretty bad, but if you look at the numbers and you compare his numbers to any of the other freshmen that we're talking about, his numbers are comparable, maybe even better. Just for whatever reasons, he just kind of slid under the radar.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's certainly a name I'm gonna look more into, and I'm sure that anybody listening is gonna look more into as well. I'll be right back with Rafael. We are going to get into probably one of the favorites for the national championship, Duke, and their top two players who, if the Knicks luck out and can move up in the draft lottery, could potentially be Knicks by the time that the draft rolls around. But after months of playing, college basketball has determined the top teams for the Final Four and will determine this year's national championship this weekend. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your betting needs and sports info from all the latest odds, contests, and player props, you name it. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your latest sports developments, including podcasts and reviews for all leagues this season. And I tell you what, I'm checking out some of the odds right now for this weekend, for the weekend's games. North Carolina Duke. I don't know if I quite feel comfortable betting on that game. There's just so much history going on there. There's so much going on. Duke's a -4 favorite over North Carolina, but it's such a close call. But I tell you what, I do feel comfortable with is Villanova +4 versus Kansas. I know Kansas has had a great season, but Villanova just finds a way to make national championship games. It's just like what they do, and I have faith that they're probably going to make it again this year. Don't ask me why. Just a feeling that they're about due again based off how things have gone for them over the years. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline is your continued source for all your favorite sports wagering information needs, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. I want to daydream for a moment as a Knicks fan here. We'll get a little bit out of, well, I mean, this isn't getting out of the tournament conversation because he's still in it, but I'll throw this out there with the caveat that I don't believe the Knicks are going to move up. They have not moved up in the lottery since Patrick Ewing. So, why now? But, I was looking back at your big boards, on NBA Draft Junkies, and you had as soon as January, you still had Paolo as your top guy. And we actually talked to Ricky O'Donnell last week, and he echoed the same thing, which, I sort of am of this opinion, like Paolo sort of had that thing about him where he was almost like RJ in a way, like where it seemed like for so many years, I heard about him as the number one guy in his class, like forever, and it was just like, look at this 6'10" guy that can put the ball on the floor the way that he can, that has the scoring package that he has as a high schooler. Like he's just an unfair prospect. Like he's going to be really good. And now it seems like people are cooling on him a bit. And, now I'm starting to hear, oh, well, maybe he's going to be the third pick. Maybe Jabari's jumped him. Maybe Chet's jumped him, whatever. Do you still have Paolo as your top guy? And if so, why?
Definitely. I've had him number one since the Gonzaga game in November. And I mean, I don't get why people are overthinking it. He's the most NBA ready. He's the only guy that I feel like out of Chet and Jabari that I feel comfortable saying, here's the ball, go make something happen. Go get me a bucket. I don't think you can give the ball to Chet and say, hey, go get me a bucket. I think Jabari, you kind of have to like run a play for him or a screen to get him open. But if he is closely guarded, then he's going to take, I mean, he doesn't have like the ability to like put the ball on the floor. And then I think about Paolo being the better passer of the three. So in my opinion, if you're going to be like a go-to type scorer, then I feel like you need to have the playmaking ability to where you can make teams pay for doubling, and your scoring opens up your passing and vice versa. And so I think that Banchero, in a sense, like RJ, I never thought of it from that perspective. He's getting penalized because he already has the NBA body. Like you can't say, oh, well, if he gains 20 pounds, then he's going to be this. Or if he does, it's like people are looking for the new hot thing, like the new, what's sexy. I mean, Chet was in, the radar for a while, and not saying like Jabari Smith was like some, off the radar recruit. I mean, he still was a top 10 recruit, but I think he was like the flavor of the month for a couple of months. And then people kind of soured on Banchero, forgetting like at the beginning of the season, I think it was like Kentucky, he got off to like this ridiculous start. He outplayed Chet at Gonzaga. Then all of a sudden, Chet starts putting up good games in a weaker conference. And then, here it is in the tournament. Banchero's made big plays. He's by far been the best player of the guys that are, expected to be in that range. And one of the knocks on him was, he only shot like low 30s for three. He's either 8 of 14 or 8 of 15 from three in the tournament. So for me, it's like kind of almost like a I told you so in a sense. Like this guy is the best. And of course, on draft day, it could totally change. But I'm glad to see that people are starting to like see what I've been seeing. And I also feel like the passing skills are slowly starting to be unlocked and showcased. Well, I think that he is a much better passer and playmaker than he's been able to show this season. And I think once he gets in the NBA, you'll see that he can play some point forward.
Yeah, I've that's not the first time that I've heard that either. And honestly, what you said almost mirrors what we heard from Ricky last week as well, as far as the passing being an extremely underrated skill with him. In addition to the fact that he's as complete of a scorer as he is. To jump to a different guy that's on the same team, but one that I personally have more concerns with, AJ Griffin, who's Paolo's teammate. He's a guy that perplexes me a little more. Like, I know some people that really love his game and really think like, oh, this guy is going to be like, even if he goes fifth, sixth, seventh pick, like that's almost like a like sleeper range for him because I think he has the talent to be, this, that, or the other. I look at him and the unfortunate thing that I always see is just this like inconsistency in him, and the fact that he could score 25 in one game and then come back and put up 3 in the next game, he just seems like sort of a mystery to me. What's your take on AJ and like how his year has gone so far? Because it seemed to just be very
Up and
much a
down.
roller coaster.
Yeah, I mean, I think it started off with the injury. I do believe if he would have kind of been like the starter from day one, then he's clearly their like number 2 option. I think once he came back, they brought him along slowly. They brought him off the bench, and then they brought him on as the starter. And I think that he's kind of seeing like, okay, the team is rolling. I'm not going to mess things up. So I feel like he's been more so trying to like fit in than dominate. Which I mean, I guess it's fine with me, especially from a team perspective. But my concern is it's not necessarily his inconsistencies. My concern would be, his medical history. Like
Mm-hmm.
I think he missed, if not all, but a good chunk of his senior year with the lower leg injury. I think same thing for like the summer. And then right when, preseason camp opened up, he had another lower leg injury. So, I mean, to me, that would be the biggest concern. But sometimes I feel like he doesn't miss. I know he shot like 45, almost 46% from three on a decent volume of attempts. He has shown some flashes of being able to create off the dribble. He's like sneaky athletic. I know when I first saw him, I was like, he doesn't look athletic because he looks like he kind of has like this pudgy body in a sense. But then there's some times where he'll make some plays where you're like, whoa, he is kind of bouncy. So I think that his inconsistencies are probably more so related to him just trying to fit in more than stand out, because he got inserted into the starting lineup so late. And then he also he has enough talent to where he is not expected to like take over and be the guy.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes total sense. And I guess so. You think that that's more him not trying to step on toes more so than the thing that I worry about when I look at how things have gone for him is if there's like you said to yourself, he's trying to fit in and not trying to like take over. You know what I mean? And
Yep.
that makes me wonder if there's like sort of an inherent passivity to him, which can be a problem, I think, at the NBA level. Like if you have all the talent, but you don't have the chutzpah, to use it,
Yeah.
then what good is the talent? Like, do you think that there's any worry about that, or do you think it's literally just sort of a situation of, I mean, it wouldn't, to draw back to the Zion and RJ thing, like it wouldn't be the first time that we've seen a Coach K team where he sort of has his guy, which in the case of that Duke team was actually RJ Barrett,
Yeah.
and then like you see a guy with, arguably as much talent or more, like with Zion, where people were saying Zion's going to be the number one pick, and yet consistently gets less touches, less shots, whatever, than RJ Barrett because of presumably how Coach K is coaching the team. Like, do you think it's a case of that, or do you think that there is a chance that he sort of has a passivity to him?
I think the RJ situation was just RJ just was looking to get his shot every
Mm-hmm.
single time. Like that's kind of been his thing. Like he's kind of predictable in a sense, he was going left and
Mm-hmm.
he wasn't like the greatest playmaker. So I think sometimes when you're wired to score and you're not a great playmaker, you're gonna end up taking a lot of shots. But also, like I think it has more so to do, like I said, is that he came in the starting lineup so late,
Mm-hmm.
and Banchero is clearly the better shot creator and better passer, and so I think he's just kind of fitting in with Banchero. But I thought that in the last game against Arkansas, he showed me something because when I look at his numbers, and the only reason I know this because I just wrote an article, but over like 53% of his shot attempts this year were three pointers. So it's like he was playing more so of a floor spacer role, I think, because he was kind of playing it safe, not necessarily coming out and attacking the rim coming off an injury. And so they brought him along slowly. And I mean, he shot well, like 46% from three. It's hard to like question a guy's shot selection when he's shooting that well from three. But to answer your question, and I get where you're coming from, you feel like there's more there. Like you want to see him do a little bit more. And I thought in the Arkansas game, I think he only made like 2 threes, but he made 7 field goals and he had some aggressive drives to the rim.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's what you're saying. Like you want to see more of that, which I do too. But it hasn't, like when I think of guys that are being more passive than aggressive, for me, he doesn't necessarily come to mind because he's on such a talented team. But when I think of like Kendall Brown from Baylor, that's the one who I feel like, all right, even though it's the same, you can make a case and say it's the same situation. He's coming on a team that just won a title and he was trying to fit in over stand out. But I feel like he was way too unselfish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. All right, so that's it for this first part with Rafael. The episode ran a little long, so if you didn't hear at the beginning, this is going to be a double episode day. So there will be a smaller bonus episode out in just a little bit with Rafael, where we're going to go over some other prospects, including Jaden Ivey and how he's kind of shot up draft boards this year. We'll talk about some other players that, Tari Eason and Keegan Murray, who are two guys that I'm really intrigued by. Rafael kind of makes the case for those guys. He gives yet another name of someone that I had never heard of before that he thinks that the Knicks might want to take a stab on as a potential Mitchell Robinson replacement if they decide to part ways with Mitch. So there's a lot of great content coming up in part 2. Just keep your ears out, and it'll be in your feeds by this afternoon. If you're listening in the morning, or if you're listening in the afternoon, go ahead and check out your YouTube or podcast feed right now, and you can have more of this conversation with Rafael. But until next time, talk to you guys all soon. Peace out.